Hello, everyone. Hello, St. Benedict. Thank you so much for being here, for joining this beautiful discussion in our efforts to illuminate our community. I really want to, of course, give all praise and glory to God for allowing us to all be present in this moment. Ms. Juanita Sykes-Bush, Our Lady of Prayer, will start the day with a special prayer.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you so much for coming. This is going to be a blessed day. Let us all bow our heads, and as we pray for our special guests, we use their talents toward writing the future of our community. Mr. Wesley, Mr. Martin, Mr. Lacey, Ms. Cola, Mr. Wanzo. Lord, our loving God, we call upon the Holy Spirit to guide us this day, to inspire us in conversation. Grant us humility to be discerning in our listening and attention to the stirrings in our heart. Thank you for every seed that has been filled today, for each mind and heart that feels the presence of this room. We thank you. Only you know what we are setting out to accomplish today. We have an idea, a vision. We have talent, abilities, and time to work. However, only you see in perfect detail the end of every beginning, every project, every season, every life. Nothing is ever in vain, for even mistakes and missteps are used for good. Your righteousness transcends all our efforts and understanding. Forgive us for our pride, the pride that puffs us up, and the pride that threatens to unqualify us. Strengthen our confidence in who you made us to be. Set us free from comparisons to work together efficiently. Bless the conversations today and all those present, as well as the lives of those we will encounter afterwards. Ready us to make every moment count. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
So I'm going to start by reading the mission statement of St. Benedict. As the people of God who are loved by the Father, being saved by the Son, and strengthened and endowed with the gifts of the Spirit for the service of the Lord. And all here at St. Benedict, we resolve in the spirit of Christian unity and cooperation to use our gifts and talents in building up the kingdom of God at East Oakland. This event, Illuminating Our Communities, is sponsored by the Knights of Peter Claver Ladies Auxiliary Corps 336 here at St. Benedict. Round of applause for our ladies and our grand lady back here. Founded in 1909, the Knights of Peter Claver Ladies Auxiliary is the oldest and largest Black labor-led organization still in existence. The order has participated in the charitable appeals of many Catholic institutions and made many noteworthy contributions to various local, state, and national organizations, including but not limited to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Ervin League, Sickle Cell Anemia Foundation, Xavier University Development and Expansion Fund, the Sister Thea Bowman Black Catholic Educational Fund, International Alliance of Catholic Knights, National Black Catholic Congress, National Black Clergy, National Black Sisters Conferences, and the National Council of Negro Women. Today, we are taking the focus to stand for social justice. That's why we're gathered. We do have a campaign goal to establish a $100,000 fund that will support these endeavors. The types of programs will fund various types, but specifically Black Lives Matter, which will include the dignity of Black lives, criminal justice reform, domestic violence, human trafficking, and racism. And so I want to take this time to honor those endeavors and ask that God lead us in those ways. I want to start with our first introduction. I have behind me Ms. Dion Cola. She is our pastoral administrator, faith sharer at the masses. She teaches our CCD classes. And I want to introduce her for her tremendous work on behalf of St. Benedict.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. And welcome here to this event spearheaded by Ms. Washington and ladies of Auxiliary Council 336 here at St. Benedict. I do have a deep voice, but obviously it's not coming across today, so I have to adjust that. For all of those from the community of St. Benedict or the community around, thank you for being here. Especially thank you to the speakers who are here to help with this event. You have chosen some wonderful speakers, ladies. Thank you so very much. Because it sounds like you're going to be encouraged. I am the pastoral associate here at St. Benedict. It's an administrator, but associate. I am here to represent Father Jason Mendeza, who's our pastor here at St. Benedict, and in the capacity that I serve in here is just to assist him and this community whenever Father Jason is out working tirelessly in the community as he does to try to uplift spiritually and to aid in any way that he can and all of the tragic events that occurred in our community. Being here on the corner of 82nd and Bancroft is shining some light for us here, and hopefully we always imagine that we stand as a beacon of light on this corner of 82nd and Bancroft, which everyone refers to as deep East Oakland, that we all know has its trials. And so as a community of faith, we always hope that we stand strong in that capacity. This church community of St. Benedict was established in 1930, and it's been illuminating this corner since then. We've had many pastors, but the last two, Father James Matthews, Father Jay, affectionately known, and Father Benedict, are the two that I can remember, and Father Paul Vassar, who still serves as a clerk of supply and is normally here working with us. I can say in my heart are the three who are progressive enough to allow this predominantly Black community to be the unique community that it is. I don't know when the transition occurred where we became predominantly African American community. I think it started out as a Portuguese community, if I'm not mistaken. But we know that what it is now is a predominantly African-American community. St. Benedict is unique in a belief that is giving back to God what was given to us, but through our ancestry, our African-American culture. But we do it by not just highlighting us, we're all inclusive and invited to the diverse community that walks through the door. So sharing our culture, our history, musically, liturgically, and in bold stewardship as that diverse community. We're committed to using our gifts and our talents that we possess, given to us by God, to build up this kingdom of God and the larger East Oakland community. God's grace has given us the power to do that, and our elders and our ancestors on whose backs we stand. In this African-American tradition of Sankofa, we all learn and teach from the past and ensure that our youth will be raised up strong in the future. For many years in this community, we've nurtured youth through youth programs, through a summer enrichment program, through an after-school enrichment program, and reaching out to the youth in the community in general, bringing them in as we saw them maybe not having strong presence in their lives as far as fathers or mothers, but we were always welcoming here, bringing them in and finding out who was the guardian, and then aiding as guardians ourselves. We brought them in and mentored them with the thought of each one teach one. And as I look at Ben Wanso, who's on the panel today, I can remember and just be proud and admire him as being one of those youth raised in this community and whose mom has nurtured an overabundance and is still doing it today. So it's just highlighting this community and what we do as an illuminator in this East Oakland community. What we stand for is definitely brightening what exists here and trying to bring peace, bring love, bring justice to all of our brothers and sisters within our reach here and even farther. Many in this community work in capacities that allow them to go beyond this little community that we have here, but have St. Benedict represented in their work environments and whatever environment they go into beyond this. We're a very loving community, and as I was asked today, it's like, why are there so many people here from Louisiana? And as we said, it's our roots. Most of us here, if we were not born and raised in Louisiana, our parents were born and raised in Louisiana, and as a part of the Great Migration, and coming here, working on the railroads, and just taking root here, raising their families solidly here in this community. And so when you look out there, you see products of that, and we are just so proud of that. And we're so proud of the way we share that in this community. If whoever walks through our doors, it's always said that this is such a welcoming community. And that's Southerners. We are born and bred to be welcoming. Whoever walks or knocks at your door is come on in, have something to eat, sit down. And this is what we have tried to keep existing here in this community, especially in the spiritual ways, because we are a church community. But we take that that's been implanted in us by our ancestors and extend it as that loving church community that we are. Sadly, we have witnessed a lot in our community, and some of the things that have been brought to light are now waning. We see and feel, and so it's a delight knowing that we have people in the community, such as yourself, here on this panel that's working to bring positiveness to light. And you're here today to share how you're doing this. Because here at St. Benedict, we are trying to envision bringing back the vibrancy that we had, being rejuvenated and renewed at this time after the pandemic, and in light of all of the negativity that we are seeing and the non-productive work that some of our leadership is, what's happening with that. And so for us here, it's like, okay, if they can't do it, we'll do it here in our parish community and just expand on that. And again, if we instill that in the hearts and minds of our youth and young adults here, it can't help but be spread as they grow and go out. And I'm just so proud that Princess called on me because of youth work that she sees going on in this community. And it's not just on me, it's many of the young adults that I'm looking at out here, Takia and Teresa and Tara, and Ramel is working here, Leonard Keith. Those are all young adults in our community now. And thank God that I've seen their faces and I still see them working here in this church community. Our Knights and Ladies of Claver, our Society of St. Vincent de Paul, our line dance group here, our wellness group here, the national night out that we do here, the ceasefire walks that we participate in here, this entire month of our homecoming is all dedicated to uplifting and holding this community together as best we can as a faith-based church community. And much prayer for that, because some of us know here that the enemy is busy and there are little voices in the back rooms that we need to listen to right now that are saying to us that maybe we cannot be that African American unique community that we are here anymore. And we need money, so maybe you need to not exist anymore. And so, yeah, out there, listen up, community. This whole homecoming month, trying to bring back our congregation is a part of that. So please listen and open your hearts and know that if we don't get strong and stand strong here in this church community, we may cease to exist. And we cannot let that happen. Because again, we may not be having kids anymore, but we are having grandkids. And you want to see the same positivity that your kids were raised in for your rankings. So just in my heart and the princess's vision that she put on today, with this panel who will share some things with us that they know, hopefully we will stand as this unique African American community who loves and shares and reach back and just lift each other up. Will stand strong as a light and a beacon here, much needed in this East Oakland community, here on this corner. So thank you for listening. Hopefully it didn't sound like too much rambling, but it was the Spirit put on my heart today.
As a child who grew up in St. Benedict's with my Aunt Shane, who's no longer with me, that's why I'm here. The example that she left, the example of the ladies and ladies auxiliary. I'm a child who witnessed that. I believe when you see these things, they become a practice, and that's how they become a habit. And I think the more that we do that, the more we can grow our communities. And so I want to thank everyone here for being a beacon of that hope for the future, and for my daughter to be around when she grows. So thank you guys for being here and for listening. Our next guest is Mr. William Wesley, whose resume is very long and very great, but I have him here today because of his idea of honoring the youth and giving them scholarships, not so much on their grades or their extracurricular activities, but based on the content of their character. And so what he did was he created a stadium scholarship program with the Warriors back in 1999. It invited the kids to come out and be honored on the Jumbotron. Their family got to come out and honor them for being good people in the community. And I think that's very important to give that self-esteem to the children. And to this day, he's a fellow Rotarian out of Fairfield Sassoon. And he implemented the Good Character Awards, where 20 kids received scholarships in recognition from the community. So I want to thank him for that endeavor and for giving that hope to the future generations.
The princess mentioned it was a certificate of appreciation. I'm not a big fan of appreciation in terms of this, but I take it. I think we have so much work to do that sometimes we have all of these recognitions where we're standing up and applauding each other. There's still a lot of groundwork to do. So I take it in the spirit it's given, and I appreciate it. I'm from the projects in Hunters Point, an alcoholic father and a correctly determined mother. We divorced that father and then remarried Mr. Bob County, who was an ex-Marine drill sergeant. And we hated him, right? Because he had discipline. And he had exactly what we as little ghetto kids in Hunters Point, California needed. And he said two things I want to share with you. He said a bunch of things. The two things. One, most of the things that happen to you happen because you either allow them or you cause them. Now, he knew there was sexism, there's racism, there's all of that stuff. But the 10,000 decisions I made this month, most of that was me. Did I stop at the stop sign? If I went through the stop sign and get hit, I can say, oh God, right? I did it. And that was a fundamental truth we had to learn. The other thing he said was, you can do anything you want to do once you do what you have to do. And for black men, I had three brothers. For black men to fundamentally understand that core concept, right? There's some steps. You want to watch cartoons at 8 o'clock in the morning? Yeah, great. You're getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, cleaning your room, doing everything you need to do, and realizing that there are steps we need to do. So I come on the projects, I end up doing what I do as a businessman, and I learn some things, and I become a father and a husband, and now I have 5 kids, they're all grown. Excuse me, an allergy. 5 kids, they're all grown. I have 13 grandchildren. And I just had my 14-year-old grandchild with me yesterday, Jordan. And Jordan and I, since he's been 6, we go to the Rotary Pumpkin Patch, and he's my wingman. And so I drive the tractor, and we tow the hay ride around, and he makes sure everyone's sitting down, gives me the thumbs up, and then we go. And what I do with this hour, I get with him to pick him up and then do the thing and take him back. I give him what I call man talks. And I started crafting this thing, saying, what based on what I know now, based on what mistakes I went through, what would I say if I could go back and say, okay, you should do this and this and this? So one, I make sure I understand fundamentally credit. Two, I make sure I understand the budget. Three, I make sure I understand how to cook, which my mom and dad made sure I knew how to cook, knew how to clean. So if I'm going to get with a woman, it's not going to be because she cooks, or when she kicks me out and have all my garbage, all my stuff in a green garbage bag, because I have credit and I have things in my name. I think we need to do a lot more of that with Black men. Now, in reference to what Francis mentioned, Oakland, the Stadium Scholarship Program, I happened to go to Leadership Oakland right around that time. And I was lucky enough to meet a lot of different movers and shakers. And what I realized is I always talk to kids. I talk in schools, I talk to Black History Month, all my kids' classes, as they came up, I went on Black History Month, I told them about Madam C.J. Walker and Benjamin Benedict, and I told them about Dr. Nathan, right? All of that stuff, because that's what my mom did with us. I learned Black History at home, because they weren't teaching it in Baby School when we did. It was sort of this science. So anyway, I realized when talking to these kids, especially the boys, the thing they wanted to do back then would be a basketball player, or a football player, or something like that. And I kept thinking, what if we could do something that the kids thought was cool, but had nothing to do with sports? And so I came out of Leadership Oakland and I said, what if we took them to the Warriors game to let them march out on the court at halftime and get recognition, not necessarily for their A student recognition. A student gets recognized. It's the C student who's working hard, who doesn't have good places to home for, so they never get all the stuff done, or they don't know the Cornell note-taking system, so their notes aren't good enough for them to study well enough to do well. But what if we pumped their ego and said, you know what, you're a good kid. So we went to the schools and we went to various organizations like Boys Clubs and Girls Clubs and said, give us kids who you say are good citizens, right? So that was the bar. So they got recognized, and then they were marched out into the court at halftime, and ladies and gentlemen, the Golden State Warriors, probably recognized, right? And then their pictures on the jumbotron. Imagine going back to school and saying, I was at the Warriors game last night. Really? And by the way, the Warriors game was food passes, because a single mom with 3 kids, feeding those kids. You don't have to worry about buying basketball food, right? $12 hot dogs. 2 parking passes, because that could be a thing. Right? I mean, pay $40 a park there, I can't take, even though he's gonna get recognized, I can't take him, I don't have to take him for $40. And some of the Warriors here, people who come over and talk to us, that's really cool. So anyway, they recognize and go back to school and say, I was at the Warriors game. Like, how? Because I was a good character, a good citizen, people recognize me. That was a major, major thing. And we sort of evolved that when I came to Rosemary in the Beverly area. And every year we do 20 or so kids, and it's in the paper and everything, the community, the politicians, the newspaper, different community organizations, we stand up and applaud kids against bullying and all that stuff. So that's still available. So I think we need to recognize as a known company. I think Asana, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly, we were having a conversation, and she was saying, what do we need to do in terms of education? We were talking about some of the things we need to do, and I think it's 3 prongs. One is the kid, and it's the home, and it's the culture around that kid that says education is good. Right, so we get a kid who has a report card that has an A's on it, we stop church and we clap, put it up there, right, give them recognition, do good. And make sure we run through that whole pipeline. There's a lot of stuff there, I'm not gonna attack it. Another thing I spend a lot of time talking about, and that is this black, white love gap. And I put together a presentation. So what I do presentations. So Major League Baseball brings financial presentations. Major League Baseball, Procter & Gamble, Cisco bring me in to listen to New York about 2 weeks ago. We did this presentation we created for the Black employees of Procter & Gamble. And what the theme was, first of all, we call it pillars of success. What are the major causes, one of this black-white wealth gap? The 2 more importantly, where we now, and equally important, what do we do going forward? And so we sort of crafted this thing in a way where people who knew there was something wrong but didn't have all the facts to talk about it. First big thing, I'll take it quickly, first big thing, slavery, right? Would set the stage that you can treat one people less than other people, right? And Martin Luther King said when we were thrown to the wheels of the wind, when we left slavery, we didn't have anything, right? So now we're out here, and when I go back to sharecropping, we cannot eat or anything like that. But secondly, Jim Crow said keep it separate. But thirdly, Plessy versus Ferguson in 1898 said separate but equal was okay in the law of the land. And that was a Pullman railroad car case where black people were herded in like cattle and white folks had food and bathroom. And the Supreme Court in 1898 said that's okay. Fourth, the Oklahoma land grab, 2 million acres. What was wealth in the 1800s? It was land. 2 million acres. We couldn't line up with a covered wagon and go out and stake a claim. And I have a friend who's a Rotarian who has a 100-acre farm that his family grabbed then. We couldn't gather up, right? We'd be hunted down trying to grab land, right? So all these steps, these are not just some random step. It wasn't because my grandfather didn't work hard. These were specific government policies. That's 4. 5, the New Deal specifically included domestic workers and agricultural workers and service workers, of which we were almost 98%, right? 6, for you gentlemen who are veterans who came back from World War II, how many of us can apply for the GI Bill and get a home? European American men could, and they built the biggest generation in the history of this country called the middle. That's where the middle class actually came in. It used to be top bottom. Most folks had money. I mean, very few folks had money. Most folks had no money. After World War II, white men were able to buy houses and create suburbs like Baby City, etc. And they populated those houses with kids called baby boomers and refrigerators and stoves and cars and everything else. And as this economy took off, they were able to say, hey, I have some equity. I'll pay for my child's college education. Hey, I have some equity. I'll invest in stock. I have some equity. I'll buy more houses. We are still on the sidelines. This wasn't some random thing because my grandfather didn't work. This was government policy. 6, redlining. Redlining was a government policy that actually listed black areas and then said hazardous. You cannot loan to this area. That coupled with restrictive covenants that said you cannot sell to a black person. You put all that together, and then it affects your society. Then it becomes black people are poor because black people are poor. It's not black people are poor because government policy virtually ensured it. So you take that as a backdrop and say, okay, what do we do now? Well, we have some incredibly positive things going on now. Almost 90% of all black kids graduate from high school. 40 years ago, only 25% did. Black women are opening more businesses than any other segment of our population. People under 40 who are of African descent are investing in the stock market much more than any part of our population. When I say our population, the American population. So there's a lot of good news, but what do we do going forward? One, my grandmother used to say, and I have a bunch of sayings. I was lucky enough to be my grandmother, my grandfather, and all of that. And somehow it stuck. She said, it's not what you make, it's what you spend. That's the heaviest thing you ever say, because we're people of African descent. We're experiencing the death of 1,000 tiny cuts every day. Right, I get into the elevator. White woman tucks her purse. I'm not gonna touch her purse. But if I get in with one of my white colleagues, there's no tuck. So he can never see it. But I saw it. I didn't say it. Hi, ma'am. Good morning, sir. And all right, you know that. Sometimes I go up and the person doesn't say good morning to me. And not that I need you to say good morning to me. What I need and what I want and what we all want is just equal. If you're not saying good morning, great. If you are saying good morning, then say it. But it's a clear thing that you stop saying it because I got it. Okay, so now, what do we do? 1, budget. 2, credit. Fundamentally understand how this game works. It's not designed to win. The credit card companies have the upper head. So if I don't live within my means until the 27th, I need to charge on my credit card because I don't have enough money for gas. Then I end that cycle. The average credit card interest rate is 16%. And most of us aren't increasing our income by 16% a year. Inflation just came in 9.6 months ago. Now it's going to be, I think it's coming in at 7% this last month. We're losing money in that. So then we talk about budget, credit, and then we talk about the money we actually have. We have 100% of our money in a bank account and 0.1%, 0.2%. Inflation's 8%. It's mathematically impossible to make money that way. So anyway, we spent some time there. And then we talked about the last thing that I've done is, as an individual, control spending, maximize my income, create businesses, passive income, annual reviews when it's time to be reviewed, real estate, make sure we take advantage of that, stock versus insurance policies. Millions of white people invest in insurance policies, and there's nothing wrong with an insurance policy. It has its value, but normally it's not the best investment. So we have to look at ourselves as a portfolio. Yes, I need an emergency fund. Well, my money sits in an online bank account that gets 2.25% right now. And then on my bank account, FDIC insured, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Every legitimate bank has to pay an insurance premium to the FDIC to make sure if they go belly up, I get their money back. Okay? I don't keep the bulk of that's my emergency fund. If something goes sideways, if someone says, hey, wait, you shouldn't have shared that much, you're out. They're right. I have, that's my emergency. It's not at point nothing. It's still mathematically impossible to make money at 2.25 in 8% inflation environment, but I'm losing less money than my B of A or whatever, doesn't matter. Name a quarter bank, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Go online, it's bankrate.com. It shows the highest interest, and it's not like Larry's Bank. It's Capital One, it's Ally, it's American Express, it's Discover, it's their online presence. Formally pass on the knowledge. When I'm riding with Jordan, my 14-year-old yesterday, I'm talking to him about budget and credit. My youngest son is William Kenneth Wesley II. We have exactly the same name other than the second. And I knew they were going to start sending him credit cards. So I walked William through the scenario. And so when we opened up, he had a $1,000 credit card. I let him charge one thing a month, as long as he could pay it off the next month. And he did it, and after 6 months, his credit score was 692. With $25 in a credit union, 6 months later, still doing the same payment thing, his credit score was 712. He's 18 years old, he works a part-time job. The first car he bought, I gave him my old car. The first car he bought was a brand new car. I didn't get a brand new car until I was in my 30s. But anyway, that's me, my attitude. Okay, so we formally pass this on, but not just talk about it. I'm from Hunter's Point. You could drive during the crack accident, and every block had 1 or 2 houses where the garage door was still askew, and there were sheets on the windows. That was the crack house. That was someone came from Louisiana, like my people came from Arkansas or Texas or whatever, came up here, did all they could, created the thing, raised our kids, and bought a house that was given to the crack guy. And then all of a sudden, the whole neighborhood changed. So it's not just giving the stuff, it's giving the knowledge. So there should be an estate plan, which includes a will, a trust, a medical record, and a durable power of attorney. And sometimes you don't have the person in your family who can do this thing. You can have a rural lineage. You can have a lawyer as trustee. In other words, execute your wishes. And last piece, Bob Campbell, my dad, and my mother, Ora Campbell, were kids from the South, and all that racism and stuff. They came out here and realized real estate was the most important thing. They bought 6 acres of land and put a house on it. And when my mom passed, myself and my younger brother, Ervin Wesley, became the co-trustees. We are under specific instruction of the threat that that house should be ours and our property 400 years from now. I've already coached my son. He's the next guy who takes over. And I'm already getting Jordan, and so we're doing every generation. We want to be like the Kennedys, one house. But anyway, like the Kennedys. My dad used to joke, he said, you know what? This is our fallback. If it all goes crazy, we all fall back to the house, put a shotgun out everything. He's from, anyway, I'm going to sit out there, and I can go all day. But it's my honor to share whatever I'm sharing with you. And I look forward to hearing from you stories.
And as you specified, knowledge is very important. Yes, you have a question?
This question, what I first Chicago, North South Side. You left out 401k. because I've had umpteen discussions with younger people,
Yeah.
and they know the phrase, but nobody's investing in it, so
Yeah, well, I didn't leave it out, we haven't talked about retirement plans and things, but the reason I mentioned that is the reason I mentioned the savings account, because everybody has a savings account. And most of us have one. In fact, a lot of our churches even had. Years ago when I was with Schwab, I talked with about 40 churches in the San Francisco area, and all of them had an as-book savings account for their building fund. Every single one of them. Every single one of them, 40 churches, San Francisco and Oakland, all have that. We're the biggest amount of money probably in America that's not invested in the stock market, at least we were then. And what I suggested then at that time was just the U.S. government bond, which was 4%. So anyway, great. And your point is absolutely well taken. When I do a financial presentation, that's one of the things how do you start? One is budget. Two, budget says I'm going to allocate a certain amount of each thing. So there's budget, there's savings, and also investing. And somehow some of us believe savings is investing. It's not. Investing is we start with 401k, a company sponsored retirement account, and then we build on top. It's a great point. Absolutely. Very well.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And thank you, Mr. Wesley, for your input. Our next guest is none other than the multi-hyphenate Donald Lacey. He is a writer, director, actor, comedian, radio talk show host, and activist. I have him here today because if you've been to Oakland, you're familiar with the Love Life motto that was founded by Mr. Lacey. He empowers youth in Oakland to make alternative choices to violence. The Love Life Foundation was founded in 1997 by himself after his 16-year-old daughter, Loshay Lacey, was murdered across the street from McClymonds High School, where she was a student. She was an innocent victim, and Mr. Lacey not only honored her legacy through his work, but forgave the murderer who took his child. And he's been doing this for over 23 years. He mentors youth. He puts on a lot of organizational things. And he is very instrumental in changing the way that life is viewed in Oakland. Imagine if all of us love life here, especially here in one of the urban capitals, right? Imagine if every person took that and took it to heart. And he's starting that process. And so I really want to honor him and his beautiful daughter and her legacy that he's keeping forward. Thank you, Mr. Lacey.
Thank you, I'm honored. Thank you. I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you for showing me. Good afternoon, kings and queens, sisters and brothers, distinguished panelists, giving glory and honor to God. First thing I want to say, I see some of you looking at me like, why am I wearing a Detroit Lions mask? No, I'm not a Detroit Lions fan. The Detroit Lions are horrible. However, I must admit I'm COVID paranoid. I'm still concerned about variants, Delta, Omicron, monkeypox, all this stuff. So I figured, how about the the Detroit Lions? One of the worst teams the last 10 years in the NFL. I won't catch anything. All right, that's my first thing. We're ready to start off. How about that? First of all, after listening to the first two panels, I don't know if I'm smart enough to be on this panel. Let me say that. I love Oakland. I'm raised here, grew up on 107 in East 14, and come from a good, solid family. The greatest man I ever met was my father, Donald Lacey Sr., and my mother, Mary Lacey. You know, we grew up in one of those real houses where 107 East 14, you know, spare the rod, spoil the child. People say, well, my mom and dad didn't spare the rod, and I thank them to the day they died, because I wouldn't be here had they not put hands on me. In fact, my mother used to give out hands on me coupons in the neighborhood. Spare the mother, be at the food, say, all right, I'll see you at church. So my story, my testimony is this beautiful young lady, and her name is Loisha, which is Igbo in Nigeria and means, as God would have it, love and life. January 24th, 1981, 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm laying in bed with her mom. She says, "It's time, my wife." So I was unprepared. I had a suitcase bag. I was driving this little hoopty Toyota at the time. I laid her back, and as soon as we got on 580 freeway in the Northern Park, she said, "I'm having this baby." And I said, "I know, sweetheart, that's why we're on our way to the hospital." She said, "No, I'm having this baby right now." So I had one hand on the wheel, and I reached between her legs, and I feel the crown of the baby's head. I don't know how I was able to stay calm, but she was really panicking. So God told me to stay calm. She said, oh my God, the baby's gonna be born in the car." I said, "Relax, honey, I can drive and deliver, it's all good." Lay back and relax. So I started pulling gently. She came out to her shoulders, and then as if propelled by some unseen force, she literally dove on the floor of the car and it was flat. And her mama just lost, "Oh my God, baby, come on, baby." So I looked at her with all the cool I could listen and said, "Honey, pick the baby up, I'm still driving." And down. So when I looked at her, and I looked as though, it felt as though I was looking at the face of God. She was flawless, beautiful, no ass, and I was just transfixed. And I wasn't paying attention. And I missed the last exit to Oakland. And then her mother got calm and said, "Honey, wasn't that the last exit? Didn't you miss the exit to the hospital?" And I said, "Oh God, please don't let the baby down." I said a prayer. And then she became calm. She said, "It's okay. You get to the toll plaza and turn around." And I just remember praying. And I said, "God, please don't let my baby die in this car," because I wasn't paying attention. And God, being the graceful God that He is, answered my prayers. We knew not to cut the cord. We got her to the hospital. We cut the cord, put her in the incubator, and man, I was feeling myself then. I was walking around the hospital. I was telling the doctor, "Yeah, you ain't got me probed and delivered a baby. Put that in your medical journal." So I filled out her birth certificate and it said place of birth, 580 freeway. Attending physician down on Lacey, and I wrote BD, baby's daddy. So I did start that prayer. That was 1981. There wasn't no baby daddy saying. And man, what the Bible says the name of the thing describes the attributes. So I gave her the name Loisha because I figured she was so eager for life, she couldn't wait until we got to the hospital. And her middle name is Adama, which means Star of Beauty, as you can see. She was definitely all that. And she was just an incredible human being. And the biggest thing I'm proud of was her compassion for other people. Her cousins, my nieces, their father left them at the age of 2, 3, and 5, I believe. So whenever we were going out, she would always look at me with the big eyes and say, "Daddy, can Elmo, Juanita, and Rosie go to the hockey?" I said, "No." That was cool when we would go to the drive. Great America, I was like, "Ooh, man, baby girl, this wasn't in the budget." But I always gave in. That was who she is. I say is because the Spirit is eternal. And she was I found out after she was healed all the wonderful things she was doing in the neighborhood. Taking them out. I was in LA, taking care of elderly people, cooking for them, mentoring younger people, doing their homework. She was a successful conflict resolution mediator at Climate High School. And what that means is, whenever a student got into a dispute, she could navigate the dispute, be they white, black, Asian Pacific, Islander, straight, gay, trans, whatever it was. In fact, her instructor at me used to say, "Mr. Lacey, your daughter, everybody loves her." So flash forward, I was going back to Los Angeles, working in my career, going back and forth. I didn't want my family in LA. And I came home in the summer of '97, and I drove to the house. Her and her cousins were sitting there, and they were crying. And And I said, baby girl, what happened? She said, my friend James Bowden, who coincidentally or not, was born on the same day as her, James, was murdered. And he was 16, I believe, at the time. And she goes, Daddy, I want to do something. So I said, well, baby girl. I said, baby girl, what do you want to do? She said, I'm tired of seeing all these black kids die. We got to do something. I want you to help me write a play. And that was the seed I didn't know at the time of the Love Life Foundation. So I hugged her and we cried and we had prayer. Flash forward, a couple of months later, that was August 97. I'm in LA, October 20, which we just commemorated, if I can say that, for the 25th anniversary of her brutal murder. And let me tell you what happened. My daughter wasn't a square, let me just say that. But she wasn't in no gang member. She wasn't into nothing like that. Everybody in the neighborhood loved her. She used to work, had a part-time job at McDonald's, right? So on October 20th, around 6 p.m., she got off of work. She was waiting at the bus stop with her friend she'd known since they were little, Maya McKee. And her mom had took Maya in because her mom had a dispute. And she got Maya a job there. So they're waiting at the bus stop around 6 p.m. in the evening. And a young man from the neighborhood who they knew saw them and offered them a ride. So they said, yeah. And my daughter was sitting behind the driver, not initially. This is why I know God has a plan. And originally she was sitting in the front seat, but then she told Maya, why don't we change seats? Because I don't want my boyfriend to see me in the front and think I'm, I don't want him to get jealous, right? She sat behind the driver. What they didn't know, sometime between the time they were picked up and the time the driver of the vehicle stopped around the corner from their house, they had been followed. This young man had gotten in some type of dispute earlier that day. So when the van stopped, 4 assailants who walked up on the front of the van, she was sitting behind the driver. They let off about 50 rounds or so. He died, and Maya was injured but not killed. And my daughter caught 7 bullets. My prayer when I found this out is that she died instantly by all accounts. That's what happened. So quite naturally, I was devastated. I was the first hand to touch this child. For someone so, and it really lit an explosion, if you will, in the community. And that night, October 20th, my dearest friend in this world, next to the man sitting in the back, Laura Hayes, her and her husband, who was gone on glory, watched over them, came to her house. First when my wife called me, she couldn't talk. I was at the improv. I got the 911 page, and they said I had a phone booth in the parking lot. So I went out to the phone booth, called her, and she couldn't talk. She was just crying, hysterically. Tell me what happened. Tell me. So after about 10 minutes or so, she said, Alicia is dead. And I didn't hear it. I was like, huh? No, not this beautiful, bright, ebullient, ever-present human being who loved everything in life. And she said it about 40 minutes. I just lost it. I tore up the phone. I ran up and down the railroads as fast as I could till literally it felt like my lungs were going to burst. I fell out in the middle of the street with traffic. And I found another phone booth and I called Laura and she said, as soon as she picked up the phone, I said, Laura. She goes, I know. That's how fast the news has spread. She said, just come on. So that night I get to her house and I'm calling everybody. And initially I am so incensed and angry that everybody was already putting inquiries. They said, Mr. Lacey, I was getting texts. They said, call so-and-so. They live in that neighborhood, woo, woo, woo. Because nothing goes on, let's be real about this in our community that we don't know. It's kind of amazing to me that a lot of these murders are unsolved by the police, but we know who's doing the dirt for the most part. Let's be real about that. So I put the word, I said, don't do nothing till I get back. I want to be there and get revenge for my daughter. And as God would have it, the last person I talked to that sleepless night at 7:30 a.m. or so in the morning was my grandmother, Mother Annie Pearl Franklin. who will be almost 102. My spiritual advisor, my mother died really young at 57, but we were fortunate enough to have my grandmother until she was almost 102. And I called her, and we had a prayer, and I'll never forget, she said, my only grandson, what the devil meant for evil, God was going to turn it good. And right then, I remembered what my daughter had taught me a few months earlier. So I put the word out on the street. I put the word out to the shot callers at the penitentiary. Don't touch them dudes. We don't want that on my daughter's legacy. We're going to build something powerful in the meaning for them, and that's what's going to be. So I stopped everything I was doing, put my career on hold, which was doing well at the time, I might add. For a good 12 years or so, we started the Love Life Foundation to get her idea. That was November 1st. 1997, we had a press conference at City Hall. Some of everybody came. J. Alfred Smith, I didn't even invite these people. Amos Brown, all these people from the faith community, people from community organizations. And we just started doing stuff. We didn't have no money. I'll never forget, December 18, 1997, a week before Christmas, this is how I knew that my daughter's life and death would serve a higher purpose. There were 750 people in the city council chambers. We had this on video. Elvin Bears, who has become my dear second father, I talked to that man who was over there, was married at the time. He gave, this was the first time in the history of Oakland that a community organization was given the dais of the city council. And we had a town hall meeting there, it was televised, 700 something, it was a line, I said, wow. So I reluctantly became this spokesperson for her, to speak for her, that couldn't speak. And January 24th, her birthday, 1998, on the spot where she was killed, we had close to 2,000 people. Barbara Lee was a congresswoman, and she was on the lead state, so she was there, all the senators were there. We marched through the neighborhood where the killers were from. Again, we know who they were, right? And people were, I'll never forget, people were coming from behind locked gates. And I said, this ain't nothing but God. Everybody's tired of all this shooting and killing. I grew up in Oakland. I tell these youngsters all the time, man, we would drive by and look for parked cars and wait for music. Hear the music, we go in there. We didn't know the people whose house it was, and they didn't know us. They welcomed us in with open arms. We ate, we drank, we danced. Nobody even got killed. Worst thing would happen if somebody stepped on your gate and said, excuse me, Brad, let's step outside and deal with this. Because there was a code to the way we behaved. We didn't want it, it's like now, it's so off the books. If a youngster is mad at me, instead of dealing with me, heaven forbid, he'll come up here and shoot up the whole church. They don't understand, and I'm going to get to that, and Brother William kind of touched on it, and I'm elaborating on that. A couple of days before Christmas, 1997, I get a call at 3 a.m. from one of the investigators. And he said, Mr. Lacey, we have a confession. What had happened, one of the young men who was 15 at the time, didn't know she was in the back seat, right? The windows were sort of tilted, and they were seeing us on the news. We were on the news almost every day for a 3-month period. And he got arrested on a possession charge, and he confessed. Come to find out, the young man's name, Christopher Smith, was public record. He used to come to the house and play with her when they was little kids. So I thought, wow, this kid has a conscience. One day, God give me the strength, I'm gonna sit down before this young man, right? So we just kept doing the work for years and years. And I'm not bragging, I have no ego about this. I've never gotten a salary for this work, nor do I care to. I still hustle in the entertainment business. We got proclaimed from the floor of Congress of American Red Cross. We had all this stuff. Never had a budget of $100,000. Never. We don't have no full-time salary staff or even part-time. We have people that we pay for the services, independent contractors that we bring in, but we kept doing the work. The mayor credited us in 1999 with contributing significantly to a 32-year low in the murder rate. But what I want to say, what my brother William touched on, this didn't happen to our community or a Black community by accident. Gary Webb, who I have the great honor and privilege of white journalist, when Sounds News exposed the CIA distributing crack cocaine in the black community by a young man who didn't even know he was working for the CIA. Rick Ross, they call him Freeway Rick Ross. Google this, don't take my word for anything I'm telling you all this afternoon. This changed the black community. We will never recover. If you look at the graph of murder in the black community with crack cocaine, which was introduced by the United States government and the CIA under Ronald Reagan, the so-called greatest president, the graph goes like this because that is one of the most addictive substances ever created by some devil to bring that. There was a woman I will never forget in 1985. They found her late marriage. She had delivered twins and they died because she was hitting the pipe. A mother's instinct in nature, not just humans, in nature, is to protect its offspring. That's how devious and evil that drug is. So I recognize the societal conditions, the social engineering that contributed to this disease we have in our community. And now we're dealing with the second generation of crack babies. These are the babies of the crack. You say, why are these kids so out of control? Well, and I'm gonna tell you, I don't blame the kids. But now, don't get it twisted. I look them in the face and say, no, I don't care what this is. You can control all of this. There is no excuse, societal or otherwise, for you to shoot or kill anybody, especially somebody that looks like you. So let's be clear. The excuse department, I'm tired of all the over them now, us. Oh, it's no. We got to stop making excuses for this behavior. Disrespecting seniors, killing babies, doing all this stuff. A friend of mine told me they call this bipping, when they're breaking into cars. He said his daughter called him and said, Dad, I need to get a gun. He said, what happened, baby? He said, I come out the store, this kid is breaking in my car. She's a beautiful young lady. Then he asked to try to talk to her. Hey, what's your name? I'm just saying, this is the level of disease in our community. But God is good. The good news is, and I tell people this all the time, 95 to 98% of the youngsters I know are great kids. It's not them, it's the circumstance. The problem is the media is complicit because those 2% get all the publicity. That's all we hear about. Then the perception becomes around all these black kids in Oakland and Detroit. No, the majority of them is just like we were. We didn't have to deal with these type of circumstances. So as I come to a close, this is our 25th anniversary. And to God be the glory, despite opposition from someone who will be nameless. We were for 13 years petitioning the city, hey, this should be the model. Let's change the culture of violence. Let's start putting out positive. Part of the problem, these young people and all of us are inundated 24/7 with murder, disrespect, B-word. That's all we hear. So my thing is, let's set out another message. Love God, love yourself, love the community, love your people, love life. So after 13 to 14 years of petitioning and a contested series of city council meetings, my community came to the rescue. By a vote of 5-3 on April 6, 2016, Love Life became the official motto of the city of Oakland. To God be the glory. Every entering Oakland sign says Love Life, not just to honor her, but to honor anyone who's had their life taken. Right? Thou shalt not kill is one of the commandments that just resonates. I don't care if it's Goofy on the corner of the state of California. All these death penalty proponents were trying to get me. Yeah, they brutally killed you. No, I'm not going to advocate for the dead. I'm not no judge and jury. That's God's job. And I get it. Your child was murdered. I get it. I feel for it. But it's got to be about life affirmation. So I became involved in what's called the restorative justice process in 2010. And I really wanted to meet this young man because, again, I felt he had a conscience. But I wasn't ready. I went through a series of meetings for years, and then I talked to my daughter's mother, and she said, no, that monster killed our baby. Why do you want to see him? But again, after prayer, and talking to my grandmother before she passed, she reminded me one of Jesus' last words on the cross. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And almost up until, so what happened, Van Jones, who I found out later, was at that first march we did. I didn't know this till 20-something years later. Then he called me and said, we have this show called The Redemption Project, where we put the offended in front of the victim, and they can have a dialogue. There's no parameters. Whatever comes out, comes out. And I had a lot of questions. Why did people shoot off 50 rounds? What were they so mad about? Who ordered this and that? Long story short, as I come to a close, and thank you for listening to my testimony. I got to meet the young man, and I told, prior to that, I told them I want a canvas there because I'm praying that I can say those 3 words to him. I forgive you. Because part of the problem and why there's so much murder, it's tit for tat. Somebody gets killed from one neighborhood, then they respond, and it goes on and on. So when are we gonna break the cycle? And it aired on Mother's Day, 2018. When I found out this young man had turned his life around, a few months later, I went to the parole board and petitioned for his release. And now he's out here, hopefully keeping his nose clean and doing the right work. And as I was telling, someone asked me, how were you able to do that? I said, I wasn't able to do it. God was able to do it. And I did it to set an example of forgiveness because the Oakland I know and love was the greatest city, black city on the planet Earth. And by the grace of God, we can all come back and realize with these youngsters how great they are and the greatness we come from so that we can have a peaceful, loving community. Thank you for listening. God bless you.
And we know that your daughter is so proud. She comes down upon you, the beautiful work that you're doing in the community is priceless. And you are offsetting future generations through your endeavors, and that is why you're being honored. And you deserve everything that you get. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge her life and the sacrifice and what she was able to bring forth through that sacrifice. And we honor her with a moment of silence. Our next guest is a son of Our Lady Wanzo, beloved as she is. He's a son of St. Benedict, native of Oakland. He serves as partner of ESO Ventures, which aims to provide competence, and capital to anyone desiring to create wealth for self and community via entrepreneurship. Thank you, Mr. Wanzo, for your endeavors.
First of all, thank you to the 3 prior speakers before me. I wanted to say that topic you guys have done for this community and the Black community overall. Beyond, you know, you've been so instrumental in my life, in your life, being here. And I've been to Warriors games and I've seen the children that actually sat in the row set aside for the folks in that game. And, you know, never knew it was started by a Black man who cared, right? Just thought it was some charity that was taking place for, to make people feel good about, hey, look, we're doing something. And in Love Life, I see it every day. And again, just thought it was a slogan, but didn't know the meaning behind it. So I am humbled to be sitting on this panel today, you know, with all the great things, all the great acts, living by faith that you guys have done. So I appreciate being on this panel. Feel like I am the rookie on this panel, hoping not to like drop the ball or make the wrong shot. And I know Mrs. Peterson even has some great stuff to say as well, so I look forward to this. But to get to ESO Ventures and my story, I am a child of St. Benedict's. I think we started coming here when I was in 7th grade. and it was what I needed in my life at that time. I think by that age, I had lost a cousin to violence. We came from Alta Hill on the same household where it could get a little risky, I guess is the right word, right? Like, you have to give a certain element to be in that environment, hillside school. But my mom started bringing St. Benedict's, and she quickly got us involved in all the activities here. She had me volunteer to do the CCD classes, so I was teaching. And it really just gave me a sense of purpose coming to St. Benedict's and a sense of identity as well. Like when you start to hear gospel music in the Catholic Church, when you have Father Jay who can bring a relatable message to you, it helped shape and let me know that, hey, as a black man, there is a different alternative to what I'm seeing in the streets. And that foundation is went on to carry me throughout my career. First of all, I got to say, I went there for my mother today. I'm looking at her because she's here. I'm pretty sure you got a flight, right? How long was that flight? 10 hours? 8 hours. 8 hours. So yeah, my little resilience and work ethic comes from that little lady right there. Came on 8 hour flight straight to here. So thank you, Mom. I mean, just be a great mother and role model. So let me start with my origin story of grew up in Oakland, experienced Oakland, the violence. My cousin died, just like brother, he was actually raised in my house. I saw through the crack of Benedict, I was a young man coming to Benedict, so, to see friends, aunts, cousins experience crack, experience drugs, see people die from it, see your friends who you grew up with who, went to the war on drug meetings with you, and they're later at a gas station because they lived on it as well. It was not a good place to be, right? And then you meet some good guys, good friends. I actually know David Peters because I went to high school with his brother. And you get a band of brothers who just say, hey, we're going to do this together. And you get a community like St. Benedict's who's going to support you through and say, then we're here for you, whatever you need, we're going to make it happen for you. And it became just the truth. Went to Mission O'Dowd because of a letter of recommendation from this church. They introduced this on my mom and I paid us much. That's check box number 1. Mission O'Dowd allowed me to get into UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley, the knights, or was the ladies, forgive me for not remembering, gave me a $6,000 scholarship.
I'm sorry.
It was the ladies. It was the ladies. It was Knights Peter Claver, yeah, Knights
I'm
Peter.
sorry. The national, I am sorry, I just, what group are you saying? The monthly meetings for the Knights of
Intercouncil?
No.
I'm sorry, having scholarship, that they give away every year.
No, I'm sorry. Is the monthly meetings, the.
Third degree?
Fourth degree. The lady Jackson. Fourth degree.
There we go.
Knights of Peter Claver gave Benjamin a scholarship. But they did that for anyone that was going to apply for it. And Benjamin, Father J recommended he apply for it in to give him the scholarship. But it was not the regular Knights of Peter Claver ladies here. It was the national.
Okay. Thank you very much. It still takes a village to make So that extended me to UC Berkeley, helped me get through it. That check came out a lot. UC Berkeley wasn't that much. I think we covered like most of my tuition at that time. I was able to do that school pretty much debt-free, which is, student loans, big debate in our politics right now. But extending on to that, went to New York, worked there for a few years, had the prayers and the congregations, and I came back, and lived there and prayed for me in Baltimore. But really had an active service while in New York. I was realizing why am I the only African American on my floor, right? I was making good money, but there wasn't anybody I grew up with there sharing that opportunity with me. It really opened my eyes to, well, what was different? What's different about me, right? Am I just blessed and highly favored, or was it something I was given that other folks were not given in terms of opportunities growing up? So with that, I went to Sacramento because I wanted to become a teacher. I just want to figure out what's going on in the education system. Because I really appreciated my education, and I realized education wasn't the truth for a lot of African Americans growing up. And I realized that for the most part, education was just a place, especially in inner city, where adults kept jobs. Right? They weren't there to educate you; they were there to keep a job, stay employed. And it really, disheartened me, especially in public school. I saw my mom and dad fight every year about paying tuition. Let my mom won the battle because public schools were not treating our children right. And I realized in order to really make change, I need to go back to school and learn a bit more. So I went to business school. From business school, I went to consulting because still, you have to call it imposter syndrome. You don't believe in yourself. So you feel like you need more and more experience to do what your truth is, do what you're called to do. And that was my mindset. I was like, I need more experience. I need more money in the bank before, I return to what I feel is a calling in my life, which was entrepreneurship. And I left my job and they said, where are you going? Congratulations. I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I was going home to figure out what business I can create. And they all thought I was foolish at the time because you don't leave a well-paying, well-respected job just to go figure out what you're going to do with your life. Like here, you figured it out, you went to school, and you landed this job. You should be happy. And I wasn't happy because I still want to get back into the community, and I still want to be an entrepreneur. And I landed, long journey, you're probably right, it's just my job, figure some things out first, but I landed on a company called Teach Bar, which was a cafe with a classroom, all in one place. It was in Bayfair Mall, and it was, again, a testament of the St. Benedict's community and being a part of the community, because Father Jay at the time realized I was a struggling entrepreneur, and he had raised funds from the congregation to support my business. I can remember one check was $3,000 that actually Dion delivered to me. And I didn't tell him, but like, I could make payroll every week. And that $3,000 check came in just in time. And further than Mr. Morris came in, and he, as an experienced teacher, started volunteering what I call my employee. Because it's a for-profit business, but he didn't get paid, but he just came in every single day to start working with students, building a strong community. So without St. Benedict's, my first business would have been belly up, and I wouldn't be able to survive, right? And if you just go all the way back to being a 12, 13, 14-year-old young African-American boy at the time, to having a strong community behind me, for that community to carry me all the way to, well, still carrying me today, but to carry me when I first started my first business, it was tremendous. So when Dion says it's important that we keep this environment, this culture alive, it is so important for the next young me that's coming up, the young students who are at college right now, students who are just out of college, students who are thinking about going to college, to know that they'll forever have a support system that's going to help carry them through in those important times. Because most of us don't have that. And I say that as I transition to what I'm doing today, which is ESO Ventures. ESO, anybody know what ESO stands for? Yes. Yeah. So about 2 years ago, my good friend Alfredo called me. He's like, hey, thanks for being in contact with the council member. He has an opportunity for me to do a pitch competition in his district. And this is the current council member, Lauren Taylor. And he said, Albert, I've done pitch competitions and they don't do much. They're like a flash frying pan, they're a marketing tool for people. And it probably was going to be a marketing tool for Lauren. So he did a pitch competition in this district. But he said, I want to have real impact, and I know you, Ben, you want to have impact. Like, how can we make this more impactful? And he called another partner named Martha, who lives on 60th in Bancroft. And he said, you guys both live in this district, you guys both born and raised here. Martha lived in House lot. And he said, what can we really do to make major change? Like, show the rest of the world, like, there's a way to create businesses out of underinvested. And I said, cool, let's figure it out. So we were just sitting there brainstorming. It took about 6 months. We said, let's just do an incubator, put out a word for folks in District 6, which is this district. See how many businesses. So we had 140 people apply for this incubator, right?
Is it 6 or 7?
So, again, this is a community where, is there a bank? What's the nearest bank in this district?
Bank of America.
Where's the bank? Oh, Hagenberg.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a credit union? There's a credit union right over there, right?
I think they closed.
Provident, right? How long's that been there? 10 years, yeah, okay. So, but typically, it's an underinvested community, right? Like, we talked about redlining. Bank of America's not giving loans to any banks, any businesses in this area. And I know that to be true because even when I went for my business and I created it, again, I have a Stanford MBA, UC Berkeley, McKinsey, which is the #1 consulting firm in the world, Morgan Stanley, which is a well-respected bank. I had cash flow and I had money in the bank myself. And they would not give me a loan. So what they did give me was a credit card. At 18%, right? But they did not give me a loan, right? So I said, if someone of my quote-unquote credentials cannot get a loan, who can get a loan, right? And we realized in talking to these entrepreneurs that, hey, 140 apply. They're like, we just want an ecosystem that can help support us, that can help us to thrive. So we did that first cohort. Of that 140, I think we actually ended up working with 40 entrepreneurs who 20 of them actually have businesses still open today. And they're all out of East Oakland, out of District 6. They're doing very well. But that was right around the time of George Floyd as well, racial reckoning. So, with George Floyd came a lot of attention to Black and brown businesses, and a lot of investment flow. And we had an advisor who came to us and said, essentially, you guys are doing, call yourself venture, but you're not really venture because businesses that you're investing in are not going to give you a high return. And he said what you can do though is write legislation to the state and let them know what you're doing, and they may be able to come and support you guys and support these businesses. I was like, the state of California is not giving enough money to the African American man. I don't know what you're talking about. He was like, well, just write it and see what happens. And I said, well, give me the framework. I don't have a framework to write legislation. So he said, okay, I'll send you something. So he sent to me, I wrote the legislation. I did this in partnership. Martha had a contact who was now a lobbyist in Sacramento. He did the lobbying. And lo and behold, the legislation went through. And it brought $8 million to the city of Oakland to support Black Americans. So with that, we have the 3C model, which is confidence, competence, and capital. And I'll just go through those 3 C's and then I'll pass it on. But the first one is confidence, and realizing that we have a lot of great creativity. We have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in the community, right? But some of them don't have the confidence to build a business. Or not even just build a business, but build a business that can hire and create opportunities for others. If you look at Black business across the country, 95% of them are sole proprietors. So a sole proprietor means you're not hiring anyone, right? It means that you don't have a succession plan. Nobody's taking over your business. If you die, your business is done, right? The other stat around that is of those 90% of Black businesses only bring in $32,000 a year. So if you look at that, we're not hiring, we're entrepreneurs, we're not hiring people, we're not hiring our own, right? And we're barely making money to survive ourselves. So essentially, Black entrepreneurship in the United States is non-existent. Or it's not non-existent, it is doing just enough to keep the person who decided to be an entrepreneur fed on life support. So our initiative said, well, if we're going to do this, we want to create employee-based enterprises. I want to be able to create opportunities for others. I want to create jobs. So I'm not just in it to support sole proprietor. I'm in it to support the person who wants to create a big enough business so that they can create jobs for others. But to do that, you got to instill people with confidence, right? Like if you think about our school system, they tell us that we're not good enough, or we're not smart enough to open a business, right? It's so hard, it's so complicated. And that's just seen in us when they tell us we're not smart enough to do math, right? What's business take? Business takes math. So if we're not smart enough to do math, maybe we're not smart enough to own a business. Maybe we're not smart enough to go hire a bookkeeper because I really don't want to expose them to the fact that I'm not making that much money. So it's a lot of entrepreneurial mindset that we have to help folks overcome to even say, hey, I can be that boss that I want to be. The second C is confidence, which is, like I said, I don't take my background for granted. Like I went to business school and I paid a lot of money to learn how to run the business. And not a lot of people have that opportunity. But they also don't have that uncle or those great grandparents who are gonna sit down and teach them, like this is how you run a business and this is how you take care of your finances. So we built in basically a curriculum to help folks meet them where they're at in terms of their understanding of finances, their understanding of business, so that they can really feel like they know what it takes to run a business. And the last thing is the capital, which is the $80 million. And we talk about, again, home ownership, home equity lines of credit, friends and family money. Like, on average, African Americans don't have access to that, right? Like, I'm not going to get up my mom, who I saw work her whole life, get her job, basically almost live somewhat paycheck to paycheck, and then say, hey mom, you need $20,000 to take a risk on, so I can start this business, right? Like, that's not a conversation I'm comfortable having with my mother. She probably would have done it, but I'm still not comfortable having that conversation, right? Or even having a home equity line of credit. When you think about generational wealth, like it was said earlier, you get a home equity, you get enough equity in your house, you can pull from that and start your business. Again, home ownership, home valuations are not that high in red line districts, so there's not equity you can pull from homes to start a business. It's a huge risk. So we essentially said, let's start a revolving loan fund that will help it be evergreen, live in perpetuity. Folks can get anywhere from 0% to 2%, which is nothing, given inflation, interest rates for these loans to start their businesses. So with our 3 Cs, we are now able to incubate about 165 businesses. The work is continuing. We went back to the state and they said, let's see if your mouth can go statewide. So they gave us additional $10 million to lend to Black and brown businesses statewide and beyond the city. So with that, I'll stop there. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wanzo, for the reality of what you're doing. Imagine if everyone had the ability to create their own businesses and how impactful that will be on the future generations. So thank you for your endeavors. Last, but certainly not least, we have Mr. David Peters, who is the son of Lady Ervin, whose big shoes I'm filling today. I want to give a shout out to Lady Ervin. She's our court historian and a wonderful woman. And today we're honoring Mr. David Peters for his award-winning Black Liberation Walking Tour. He leads guests on a 2-hour, 10-stop walking tour in West Oakland neighborhoods. He has been recognized by Condé Nast as one of the 6 standout Black history tours in the U.S. from California to Charleston. So, way to represent, right? And so, the idea came to life when neighborhood elders were telling stories, like Ervin, of course, right? That captivated both longtime residents and newcomers alike. And he knew that through celebrating artistic, cultural, and heritage sites in the neighborhood that was span over 100 years, things, people, and events that Black folks did right here could be inspiring for us to stay in our neighborhoods. So thank you so much, Mr. Peters, for your endeavor.
Thank you so much. I definitely appreciate this. Firstly, I want to thank the panel for just having the opportunity to be here to listen to each one of you for what you have given me and the rest of us. It's an honor, certainly, and a humbling experience to participate. I want to thank the Grand Ladies and the ladies for putting together this event and for Princess for filling in for Mom. I'll say this, Brother Lacey, you brought holding me to the work of their driver. I know you jokes. My name is David Peters, and I'm just reflecting. I founded an organization called the West Oakland Community Action Network. West Oakland Cultural Action Network. So what I'm hearing here and experiencing here today is culture, is community. And I'm reflecting on just how small our communities are and how tight and the webs and bonds are, how close to remote. Although I am not a formal member of St. Benedict's community, certainly, I have known and known so many people that are part of this community. The Wanzas, known for a long time. My mom has certainly been in this community, church community for a long time. I went to high school with Father and David at St. Mary's and lived in East Oakland for a good portion. So I guess I'll start into this just a little bit, just telling you a little bit about my background. I've been a CPA for 30 years or so, and was frequently, the only Black, this or that or wherever I was. And it took me, I think, a lot longer than everyone else on this panel to figure out what it was I was supposed to do. So I'm almost 60, and it took me until a couple of years ago to really figure out and find out the work I was supposed to be doing, and then to accept that and begin to walk into that work. And didn't begin to do that fully until this past July 1st. And now realizing that what ease looks and feels like when you have a passion to get out every day to do what it is before. So I'm a third generation West Oaklander, and my wife and I moved back to Oakland 5 years ago after 20 years of living in the Central Coast of California, back into a house that my grandfather had acquired in 1955 when the white folks ran away from San Angelo. We like to call white flight, but I think we want to also talk about white incentive, because this is the plan. And so we got here because my granddaddy had graduated from law school. And there's no work for Black wealthers in the late Depression in Houston, Texas. That's skilled labor. Black folks weren't able to do skilled labor there. And so after they hired all the white men here to work in the shipyard of World War II, they hired all the white men. Then they hired everybody of every other color, every other gender. They started advertising for folks down south. And my grandfather and his brother-in-law heard there was work for Black folks up in the shipyards in Portland, so they jumped in a Model T bound to Portland. Now there was gas rationing during World War II. Gas coupons to fill up gas, and they ran out of those gas rationing coupons in Oakland in 1942, and my family's been here ever since. So, I heard you talk about, so many folks in Louisiana. So unlike, some of the other cities in America, which had a first great migration, that second great migration of so many Black folks to Oakland really where a large portion of Oakland's Black population came from. Now, every time I hear that, say that, there's always somebody who says, we've been here since before 1900, who says, we were here before World War II, and that's absolutely true. And we have to also remember that that's part of the story. Oakland was 4% Black in 1940, just a little over 8,000 Black folks, and there were 48,000 in 1950. So Black folks started pouring into Oakland directly from the rural South, tens of thousands by the years and into the decades. 40 and 50,000 Black folks came in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And that migration began to slow down into the early 70s, but primarily from Louisiana, Texas, and Arkansas. And so Oakland really has a unique cultural, historical story that I think has made it unique in world, the cultural and political foundation of Black militancy, history, culture. It has got this small town a worldwide reputation. It is a place where people come to from all over the world in search of that culture, to be a part of it. We have been innovators across politics, labor, culture, sports. For a relatively small town, we have had outsized impact. And I would tell you that it has a lot to do with the nature of Black rural Southern migrants who moved into a city where there was not a large urban Black population and whose rural values continue to be transmitted down the generation. So I think about that strong Black Catholic community. My brother was from Louisiana, and one of the reasons that we have so many strong Black Catholic communities in Oakland was so large a population did come from Louisiana. And so before my mother moved to East Oakland and was part of this parish, and she grew up, and I grew up going to St. Andrews, Rockhurst and St. Patrick. Parish and church, unfortunately, that was torn down after the United earthquake. I'll stop there. And that no longer exists except in the memories of those who knew about that church. So I grew up remembering second lines coming down the block, as the rural Southern Louisiana Catholics were moving on and were celebrating, their lives. And so, interestingly enough, I saw 3 last year, probably. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. And so to see that cultural tradition remain was one of the inspirations for me founding this organization. So let me tell you a little bit about the tour. So the tour, and my wife Jackie has these brochures for you. As Princess was saying, we are a 10-stop, smartphone-based audio walking tour of the Hoover Foster. Don't call us ghost town anymore. Of the Hoover Foster or Hoover Durant neighborhood in West Oakland. So we have 10 sites that span history from the early part of the 1900s, just until a few years ago. Black folks and Black events and Black institutions that have demonstrated the power of our communities and our individuals to be able to stand up for a little bit more liberation in the face of small and expanding freedoms. I think of why so many Black folks came, like my grandparents came from the South, looking for a little bit less Jim Crow and a little bit more education for their kids. That's what they found. That's what the land of milk and honey. They came out here to find segregation, to find Jim Crow, to find the Louisville Police Department, to find all of these financial shenanigans, redlining, residential segregation, deed restrictions, unions that had a second-class tier for Black workers, and they still made it way. And so it was that culture that I believe that sustained them and sustained me and sustained our communities and our neighborhoods for decades. Because I grew up on a block with a whole bunch of elder Black folk that If you know you've done something wrong, they gonna get you, and then you gonna get home, they done burned up the phone. You know, I like to tell people that up until about 1980, Oakland was the farthest west outpost of the Deep South. Because of those cultural values that I learned on that block from going down home every summer, you know, and just the tightness of those communities. I think of folks like my grandfather who, when he wanted to, you know, buy his first house, was turned down, you know, 4 times. He would keep my mom going to Hoover School over there in West Oakland. That junior high school, that cut through West Oakland basketball. And he was turned down 4 times to buy some property in that neighborhood, because that was North Oakland. And I think he was probably going to get close of black folks on that block. COW actually lived in that block. But he went and bought a vacant lot, and he moved to run down big old Victorian on it. And he and that cohort of other black rural southern migrant men who worked with their hands fixed that house up, chopped it into a triplex. And then they began to house other black folks in West Oakland that didn't have enough housing for black folks. So when we talk about the housing crisis in Oakland today, I always like to remind people there's always been a housing crisis for black folks in Oakland. What we have now is a displacement crisis. 60,000 black folks have been displaced from Oakland since 1990. Let's say that again, 60,000 black folks have been displaced. Every other racial group has increased their numbers in Oakland, except black folks. So, you know, we have to understand, you know, why that is and how that happened and what it is that we can do to begin to combat that. You know, there are a couple of threads, you know, around that. I'm just checking on my notes here. I made a couple of notes that we're talking about. All right, so one of the things you got to know about me is people like to say is I'm so local. You know, I love this town. You know, I grew up in this place, going over there to the House of Champions on 66th Street. You know, I've taken so much pride of being in that little town in San Francisco's, the little brother, having a chip on my shoulder, being in San Francisco's shadow. I've always known that we was overlooked and stepped on, but that made us stronger. Because our talents here shone because of that. You know, don't tell me something that I can't do. That's the first thing I'm trying to do. And I think that is part of the heritage and the character of what it meant to grow up in Oakland. Always we talked about a little bit of Washington, San Francisco, to get the bad press. You know, and the folks are always telling us about the bad parts and not the great parts. So this is one of the reasons that, you know, I produced and founded the store, is to tell these stories of ourselves, to ourselves, about ourselves, and to claim this proud and rich history, because it's the history that we need to know. That we should be able to not only tell to each other, to build up our own sense of pride in ourselves and in these places that were forsaken for so long by our government, federal, state, county, and municipal institutions, but that we used for so long water our sweat and our tears and our salary and blood. That now becomes so attractive to some other folks, you know, who are now coming back into our neighborhoods. And, you know, so many suburbanites that, I'll come to the story this way. So we talked about, you know, many of these factors of why our cities look the way they are today. Shopping cities surrounded by the suburbs, in the words of that great philosopher, George Clinton, right? So we think about, you know, these federal policies when Oakland was expanding, when, you know, West Oakland was part of town that held every person of color, Black, Mexican, Latino, Asian, were all confined. 85% of Black folks lived in West Oakland at one point. Until it became, we just came too many, tens of thousands, began to spill out, you know, firstly along that North Oakland corridor. And then eventually, they started allowing us to move to East Oakland, and then above East 14. It is not very long ago that East Oakland was a white community, and Black folks in East Oakland confined below East 14. If you look at a red line map, the 1936 Homeowners Loan Corporation red line map of Oakland, you can see, you know, where folks were defined. And it wasn't just Black folks. before Portuguese and Italians were white, it was a threat too. You know, banks wouldn't loan to them until they migrated into whiteness along the way. We have to understand that it looks like and how that happens. So this is a risk map. So you can find a place up in the hills that has a risk map and realize it's about geology. But you can also look at career expansion or flat lands and realize that's not about geology, that's about race. So this is an intentional policy of the federal government that took all the tax money from all the people that lived in those neighborhoods and used it to offer subsidized government guaranteed loans to people in other parts of this city and other cities. And so when black folks, particularly at this time, started expanding, out of West Oakland, and in that post-World War II baby boom, when America began to be suburbanized, we all learned about Levittown. Many of us learned about Levittown, the so-called first suburb in America, in junior high school. Levittown, one of the large contractors there was a brother, bought a truck, started delivering drywall. Did very well. Not allowed to buy in Levittown because it was racially strict. Because the United States government, in order for developers to get a government guarantee, to get a bank guarantee, required those developers to have as part of the master development agreement a no whites only policy. And then they required that every deed, and every lot, and every house, and every business in those developments also had a racially restricted covenant. And that's how San Lorenzo got it. So we use our tax dollars to subsidize a whites-only San Lorenzo development, and then use our tax dollars to build freeways to go from San Lorenzo and Fremont and Milpitas and these other places that were whites-only to connect them to San Francisco. So the businesses that used to be in Oakland that provided employment for so many of folks that came from the South dispersed down into racially segregated areas like Fremont and Milpitas. And then they gave some folks that know some budding suburbanites drove over and through Oakland into San Francisco. And then what did we get? We got freeways that destroyed our neighborhoods. Some of y'all know about that site which that West Oakland had. We got a barge line right down 7th Street. We got a post office. We got, and then it wasn't okay, and also the same thing in Chinatown. We got a barge station, and other post office and other civic institutions intentionally placed in neighborhoods, in non-white neighborhoods, especially black neighborhoods, to displace us. Because what happens if you can't borrow against your real estate for 20, 30, 40 years, of course the property is going to decline. And then government comes along and uses its own policy to say, this is a blighted neighborhood. We're going to knock it to the ground and give you pennies on the dollar for it. They even try to go in court to sue for that. There's no justice there. And so this is quantifiable in our living history. I can remember when the Acorn was destroyed, and there were 50 square blocks of playground in West Oakland. And I was a young child, but can know intuitively something's not right. I don't see this in other neighborhoods. So as we kind of move into what it is that we can do about it, I think it's essential that we begin and continue to demand municipal reparations. Right? This is a quantifiable act of wealth transference that was fomented by our federal government, implemented by municipal government. And there are tools and avenues and policies available to us to advocate for reparations and restitution and redress on that. So we've seen this. There are other cities around the country that have introduced municipal reparations policies. Springfield, Illinois. We've seen places like Portland, Illinois, introduce a preference policy and a right to return for displaced black homeowners and property owners to come back from the places they've been displaced to. So as we begin to think about, what are the policies that have been so successful here, we have to be our own, best advocates, around this stuff. So I also think that I sit on the board of the East Bay Asian Local Government Corporation. It's a nonprofit affordable housing developer, primarily here in Oakland. We've got some properties in some other places. We manage more affordable housing units than any other organization in Oakland, commercial property too. And most, despite Asian being the name of the organization, most of our clients are Black, because we understand how we came to have not only a large wealth disparity, but a large income disparity. For example, average median income for Black families in West Oakland is $30,000. Average median income for white families in West Oakland is $90,000. So who's going to need affordable housing? So naturally, you see, our folks overrepresented in that population. But ultimately, no matter how cheap the rent is distracting. You would never build wealth, no matter how cheap the rent is. And so, also part of that story and that wealth gap is that predatory lending crisis. When they came and gave, folks marching these worst loans, the ones with the exploding interest rates, and then came and foreclosed on those homes in the wake of the 2008 recession. To the extent, now when my family arrived on that block in 1950, we were there with the fourth Black family on that block. By the time I was born in the mid-60s, the whole neighborhood was Black. My wife and I moved back, we were once again the sixth Black family on the block. That neighborhood had come full circle, and a major portion of that was that foreclosure crisis. When I saw so many kids and grandkids, and therefore those folks that I had grown up under on that block lose those houses, such that by 2012, half the houses on that block were abandoned. And now we've had neighborhoods that had 100% Black ownership rates in North Oakland, now we're over 50. But don't folks tell you that Black homeowners ain't out there still, because we are still here despite the fact that our government, our local government, is not looking at us and it wants to invisibilize us. It is not putting in the practice and in place the policies to not only keep us here, but to bring folks back that were here and to create more Black homeowners. This is possible. Don't anybody tell you that it's not. So, one of the things that I've got, I'll wrap with this. There are two policy initiatives that I'm working on. Oakland has a preference policy for affordable housing. So let's talk about affordable housing. That has a technical definition. It's defined in terms of annual median income. So if you make under 120% of annual median income, which for Alameda County is about $115,000 for a family of two other kids, you qualify for, you fit that definition of affordable income that will qualify for affordable housing. So we build kind of 50% of the units needed for the very lowest income tier, a third for the next income tier, 3% for the 80 to 120. These are our potential homeowners. And we lost in that foreclosure crisis, Black folks lost the most. We lost the most in terms of home ownership. We lost the most in terms of wealth. And we know in America, the greatest path to wealth is through property ownership. So I believe that until and unless we're able to repair the damage that was done through these government policies, there will be no justice, right? So the universe wants justice to happen. We will see continued dislocations until that's made right. So there's a preference policy that the city council's passed that I think needs to be straightened. We need to talk about the ability for folks who have been long-time residents of our communities to get preference when it comes to both rental and ownership of affordable housing. So that we're no longer alive, but we provide preference to those folks that are most directly harmed. And I think that's how we continue to build culture and to begin to have neighborhoods that work, that have folks of all income levels. And the last thing that I'm working on is specifically a $50 million allotment from a tax, what we call a tax infrastructure district. We used to have something called redevelopment. This is an item that is passed along through the city council. It is connected to the Oakland Athletics Howard Terminal Village development. And it's an opportunity for our communities to get something tangible, from that development. So it's fighting with the city right now. It is in there. It's a question whether at this point, whether they're going to bond this out, whether they're going to get the money on front, or let it dribble in over 45 years. So if you find any of this compelling, it's something that you're interested in, if it's something that you want to support, if you tell me if it's something that's crazy, and I should do something different, grab one of these little booklets. You can find, my contact information in here. And let's think about ways that we can continue to preserve our communities, to keep our culture strong. I founded a cultural organization rather than a political organization, because I believe it's our culture that has kept us strong and whole for the entire time of our time here in America, and that's what makes us different. And so much of that everybody here is working on all comes back to this cultural values that so many of us learned for so long from folks. Thank you.
We have one more guest, Mr. Tongo Easton Martin, who's the San Francisco Poet Laureate. Treated his nation, he's not here, he's organizing the next resistance. I was honoring him for his community occupation for Parker Elementary, which has been ongoing since last May. It was a courageous act in order to stop the Oakland Unified School District from closing the East Oakland School. At the beginning, the school board had a revote on the school closing, where the community was outvoted again by politicians who hold the interests of developers in charter schools higher than the interests of the Black, Brown, and Pacific Islander students who live in the area surrounding the school. He was one of the original and core organizers holding down the Oakland school. It was a 24-hour occupation, and treated his nature and his philosophy as a poet. He believes that the poet needs to just come on down to the trenches, and that's where he gets a lot of his work. And so, although he's not here, I do want to honor his work in keeping education local to the kids here who live locally. And so, Brother Tongo, I honor you in your presence. And thank you very much. You are a testimony to our culture, our community, and what we are all capable of if we all band together. And so thank you so much for your endeavors. Thank you, guys.
That concludes our program.
Includes her.
Q&A, I'm sorry. Anybody have a question? Who got a question? Questions? Okay, we got one back here. I'm sorry, y'all forgot. I got my stuff. Mr. Ervin. Ervin. Go ahead.
I'm Peter, smile.
Oh, okay. I don't get the council to deal with this subject matter. I go to every council, every school board meeting.
Mama out of the bottom.
Mama's side. Listen, gentrification. Oakland and San Francisco are the #1 gentrifying cities in the United States. We have no conversation about how to stop gentrification. We don't have any conversation about Proposition 209, how it limits us with the capacity for African American issues to be dealt with specificity around Black people. We have to bring other people into the mix in order to have that conversation. Could you speak to gentrification and Proposition 209? It failed twice to be brought out of the Constitution of California. Can you just talk about gentrification and how it's affecting us? That's what gets me upset. Whenever we talk about as if other people are going through the same thing as we're going through. It's not the case. We 80% of the evictions, 70% of the homeless, 60% of those who get I think rental issues. But we have to start saying this is happening to us. And it's not Black and brown people. Every group is growing. Be 20%. We started out at 20, be 22%. Now we're down to 20% of the population. every race and ethnic group in this city is growing except us. And what ticks me off is we don't specify and say, this is about black people. We hurry up and say, this is black, brown, and Asian people, we all together. We not have the same experience. I'm sorry, we don't have box. With gentrification and Proposition 209, I'm holding this back. Thank you.
So, y'all know, this is a warrior for us right here at speaking. I hear her at every council meeting and every committee meeting, bringing up these issues, talking about black folks unapologetically. I'm sure you heard me in the meetings talking about the library.
Oh, don't forget the meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, and this need for fiscal reparation. So we've got that council that talks about how progressive they are. Yeah, we have a city council that has not introduced any fiscal reparations measures. Well, black folks even know. And so I wonder, say to myself what I say to them is how progressive can you be? Our neighborhoods have been ripe for the taking. If we look at this phenomenon and just go back a generation, we realize we're redlining and opportunities in suburbs are made for white families only. Now, the inheritors of that generational wealth are now giving it back into our neighborhoods and reclaiming those neighborhoods that they first abandoned to us 40 or 50 years ago. This is not an accident. So until and unless we're able to hold our city council accountable for the actions that the city has taken, we will continue to suffer the most. Now, that's external. Internally, we have to also take it upon ourselves to do what we can, right? So we have to be able to talk to brothers that have this financial expertise to understand we have to hold on to this property, right? Whatever means is necessary. I have a neighbor from one of the folks on my tour, bought out Deutsche Bank. We're trying to repossess her family home. So I'll keep it brief. We know there's structures in our government around anti-affirmative action. Affirmative action benefit white folks. Right? So we know that. We know that unless and until that we become active, engaged, and involved, and engaged on the level in our local governments and begin to watch these folks and demand what it is that we want to have, it will use us difference and pull that trigger. Because there's a whole bunch of folks doing a whole bunch of things in the name of black folks that is not for black folks. Watch it.
Brothers, I agree with you. Reparations coming down the pipe. Yet, and we know all of this is just a case. We have to be smart enough to know what we're getting into. January the 10th, there's going to be a discussion over in the city about reparations. I am a part of the African American Geological Society of Northern California. We will have a person, Nika Smith, will be part of that panel to discuss what it takes to qualify, because you know that every time we take one step, they got 10. How can you prove that you or your ancestors were ever enslaved? And what qualification does that take? Does that mean someone who is here from Haiti? Does that mean someone from the islands? Or does that mean someone with African descent and how long they've been here? So we have to understand what the game is first before we even play the game. So our society is available to assist, but Nina Smith will be on that panel and she will be answering questions. I understand it will be virtual. I will also, if it's possible, to have an announcement at our church in Benedict as to when that takes place. The African American Geological Society of Northern California. I'd like to thank Princess for putting on this talk. But I also would like to say another thing about Princess. I moved to Sassoon City, and a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week or two, I was driving up Railroad Avenue to Sunset, and I saw this sign there, and it said Princess Washington on it. And I didn't get to see the face, so I went on about my business and I made it my business, and I came back to get a good look at the sign. And this young lady is running for city council in Sassoon City, so I think we should give her an applause.
But, I thank you for that acknowledgement, but really, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for St. Benedict and for the lessons that my Aunt Shane taught me that were, innumerable. And before she died, she made me promise her I'd be a lady of the church. And so I think my greatest thing and what I'm most proud of is that I kept that word to her. And now I fully understand why. This is very full circle for me. I grew up in these halls. And to bring my child here, I think it's unexplainable. But I love this church. I love what this has done for me and everyone else. And it's a testament to our community. What we are building here is amazing, and we will keep building. And one thing about us is nothing stops us. We are always here and we keep going. And I really want to acknowledge that community that brought that forth. So thank you guys for being here and for doing this and this acknowledgement of these great people before us who do a great work. Thank you guys.
One more time for Princess for having the courage.
Any more questions before I forget again? Thank you guys for coming. You guys put the time in to be here, and this would not be anything without you. I can have the idea, but you guys brought it to life. And your work is what gave the idea of merit. So thank you again. Thank you.